Vivian's back. Let's divorce. Ryan Whitmore said it the way a man orders coffee. He slid the envelope across the counter toward the woman who had given him 12 years of her life, and he didn't even look up. He already knew how this would go. She would cry, she would beg, she would remind him of everything she'd surrendered for him. Instead, Emma Parker picked up the pen. She signed her name in one clean line, and she smiled. That was the moment Ryan Whitmore made the biggest mistake of his life. If you believe no woman should ever have to make herself smaller to keep a man stay with me until the very end of this story, please subscribe to the channel and follow Emma's journey all the way through, and leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. Ryan stood there with his hand still resting on the corner of the envelope, waiting. He was waiting for the sound he had prepared himself for, the sharp intake of breath, the chair scraping back, the voice climbing into that register he'd learned to brace against over 12 years, though in truth he could count on one hand the number of times Emma had ever raised it. Nothing came. Emma capped the pen. She set it down beside the paper with a small click, the way she used to set down instruments, and she slid the envelope back across the counter toward him. "There," she said. "Anything else?" Ryan blinked. "Emma, that's my name. Did you read it?" "I read all of it," she said. "Page 4 is where you offered me the house. Page 6 is the accounts. Page 9 is the number your firm's family law group thinks a woman like me should accept without arguing." She looked up at him then, and something in her face was so calm it made the back of his neck go cold. "You had them draft this 3 weeks ago, Ryan. The metadata's on the last page. You should tell your paralegal to strip that out next time." "Next time," Ryan repeated. "There's always a next time with men like you." He laughed. It came out wrong, too loud, too short. Okay, I see what this is. You're doing the ice thing. The thing where you go quiet and let me sit in it until I feel like garbage." He pulled out the stool across from her and sat, and he spread his hands like he was addressing a jury. "Fine, I deserve it. Say it. Whatever you want to say it. Now get it out and let's be adults about the rest." "I don't want to say anything." "Emma?" "I signed it," she said. "That's my answer. Signing it was my answer." "That's not an answer, that's a signature." "Funny," Emma said. "You've built an entire career on the idea that those are the same thing." That landed. She watched it land, watched his jaw move once, and she felt nothing about it. That was the part that surprised her most. Not the envelope, not the 4 words, the nothing. Ryan tried a different angle. He'd been trying different angles his whole life. It was what he was best at. "I know how this looks. Do you? But I want you to understand that I've been honest with you. From the beginning of this, I've been honest." "You've been honest for 11 minutes, Emma said. "You walked in, you put down an envelope, and you said 4 words. Before that, you were something else. Let's not confuse the two." "Vivian came back in March." Emma's hand stopped. It was small. It was so small that a man who had actually been looking at her for the last decade would have caught it, and Ryan didn't catch it because he hadn't been. "March," she said. "Yes, it's November." "Emma, it's the 2nd week of November, Ryan." Her voice hadn't gone up. It had gone lower, steadier, like a hand pressed flat on a table. "So when you sat across from me at your father's birthday in April and told everyone how lucky you were, when you took me to Michigan in June, when you were sick in August, and I sat up with you for 2 nights because you don't trust anyone else to take your temperature, all of that was after March." "It wasn't like that the whole time." "Which part wasn't?" "It was complicated." "Which part wasn't, Ryan?" He didn't answer. He looked at the counter, and Emma understood then with a clarity that felt almost surgical that there was no part. There had never been a part. There had been 8 months, and she had lived inside them like a woman living in a house with one wall missing, thinking the draft was just the weather. "Say the number," she said. "What number? How many months you've been telling her you were going to do this? How many months you've been telling her, I just need to find the right moment with Emma, because I know that's the sentence. That's exactly the sentence, isn't it? I could write your text messages for you." Ryan's face did something then. It was the first honest thing he'd shown her all night, and it wasn't shame. It was irritation. He was irritated that she'd guessed it right. 8, he said. 8 months. Yes. Emma nodded slowly. And your mother, what about her? When did Diane find out? Emma, that's not... When did your mother find out? Ryan's phone buzzed on the counter between them. He reached for it fast, too fast, and turned it face down, and in that one small motion, Emma had her answer complete all of it with the bow on top. She's known since the spring, Emma said. Hasn't she? That's why she stopped calling me about the gala. That's why she rescheduled lunch 4 times. Your mother has been sitting across from me at holiday tables for 8 months, knowing my marriage was over, and she smiled at me and asked if I'd changed my hair. She wanted me to handle it my way. Your way. Yes. Your way was letting the whole family know before your wife. They're not the whole family. They're my parents. Your sister, Emma said. Silence. Your sister knew, Emma said. Beth knew. Beth, who called me in September crying about her husband, who sat in my kitchen and let me make her tea and tell her she deserved better. Beth knew. Ryan said very quietly. Everybody knew. And there it was. Emma had spent 11 years learning how to keep her face still. It was the one skill from the old life that Ryan's world had actually valued, though it had valued it for the wrong reasons. She used it now. She kept her face perfectly still, and inside her chest, something enormous and old cracked all the way down the middle, and she let it, and she did not move. Thank you, she said. That's the first useful thing you've said tonight. Don't do that. Do what? That. Ryan stood up. He was pacing now. That thing where you go polite. Where you go so calm, you make me look like an animal. You've done it our entire marriage, and I hate it, Emma. I have always hated it. And I'm going to say something now that I probably shouldn't say, but you asked for honest. He turned. Living with you was like living with a closed door. Emma looked at him for a long moment. You're right, she said. He wasn't ready for that. What? You're right. It was. There was a door, and it was closed, and you had no idea what was behind it. She stood too, and she was suddenly aware of how long it had been since she'd stood at her full height in front of this man. But Ryan, who closed it? Don't. Who told me the emergency department was no life for a wife? Who said, and I remember it exactly, I remember every word, you don't need to spend your nights in emergency rooms anymore. You have a different life now. She was not shouting. Her voice was absolutely level, and that was worse. You closed the door, you closed it, and you locked it, and then you spent a decade complaining that the room was dark. You could have said no. I did say no. Once. I said no for 1.5 years, Emma said. You just don't remember it as no. You remember it as a phase. Ryan's phone buzzed again, and a third time in the rapid, urgent stutter of someone who was not going to be ignored. Emma looked at it. She looked at him. You should get that, she said. She's waiting. Emma, she's waiting. Ryan, 8 months is a long time to wait. Go on. He didn't move. And Emma, who had spent 12 years being the person who made things easier, felt something rise up in her that she had not felt since the last time she'd stood over a bleeding stranger at 2 a.m. and told a room full of panicking people exactly what to do. She reached across the counter and picked up his phone and turned it over. Emma. She answered it. Hello, Vivian, she said. There was a silence on the other end, so total it was almost a sound of its own. Then a voice, careful, cultured, unhurried. Emma. He signed nothing yet, Emma said. I did, just so you know the sequence. It matters to me that you know the sequence. Emma, I never wanted... Don't, Emma said. Please, I mean that kindly. Whatever the next sentence is, I've heard it. I've heard it from his mother. I've heard it from his father. I've heard it at 400 dinner parties from women who wanted me to know they were on my side. I don't need it from you. Vivian's voice changed. It got quieter and honest, and it was the honesty that did it. You should know he talks about you, she said. Emma went very still. He talks about you constantly, Vivian said. 8 months, and he has never stopped talking about you. Do you know what that's like? To be the woman a man leaves his wife for, and to sit across from him at dinner and listen to him explain again why you're not enough of a problem for him. Ryan lunged for the phone. Emma stepped back and held up one hand, and he stopped because some part of him still obeyed that hand from the days when it had been the hand of a woman who knew what she was doing. "Vivian," Emma said, "how much of him did you actually want back? Be honest, not the memory. Him. The man who's standing in my kitchen right now with his hand out trying to take a phone away from a woman because he's afraid of what she'll hear." The silence stretched. "I'll let you go," Vivian said, and she hung up. Emma set the phone down on the counter screen up. Ryan stared at it like it had bitten him. "That was cruel," he said. That, Emma said, was the first conversation in 8 months in which anyone told me the truth. And it took a woman I've never met to do it. She went upstairs. She hadn't planned to. There'd been no plan at all, and later when she tried to explain it to Sarah, she would say that it was less like deciding and more like a hand had taken hold of her ribs and turned her toward the stairs. She walked up the stairs of a house she had lived in for 9 years, a house she could not have described to a stranger because she had never once looked at it as her own. She pulled a suitcase out of the closet, not the matched set, the old one, the nylon one with the bad wheel and the airport tag still knotted to the handle, and the strip of duct tape she'd put on the side in her second year of residency so she could find it on a carousel at 4 a.m. when she was too tired to read. She hadn't seen it in 11 years. She put it on the bed and she opened it, and it still smelled like the inside of her 20s. Ryan came up. He stood in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Packing." "Packing for what?" "Where are you going to go?" "It's Tuesday, Emma, it's raining, and you don't—" He stopped himself half a second too late. Emma turned. "Finish it." "Forget it." "No. Finish it. You were going to say I don't have anywhere to go." She waited. "Weren't you?" "I was going to say you don't have to leave tonight." "That's not what you were going to say, but I'll take it because it's the more flattering lie, and I'm tired." She turned back to the case. "You can have the house. You can have all of it. I'm not taking anything that has your family's name on it." "That's insane." "It's mine to be insane with." "Emma, that's 9 years of look, I get it. Do you want to make a point? You want me to feel it. Fine, point taken. But you are not going to walk out of a 12-year marriage with a broken suitcase because in 4 weeks you're going to be sitting in some extended stay hotel doing math, and then you're going to call Marcus, and he's going to call me, and it's going to be so much uglier than it needs to be." "You've thought about this a lot," Emma said. "I've thought about all of it. For 8 months, yes. Then think about this." She stopped. She turned around, and for the first time that night she let him see something. Not anger. Something older and colder and far more dangerous. "I'm not doing this to make a point, Ryan. I want you to understand that because I think you'll waste a lot of your life not understanding it. This isn't a strategy. There's no play here. I'm not going to call Marcus. I'm not going to sit in a hotel doing math." She said it very gently. "I just don't want anything you've touched." Ryan's face went white. "You'll regret that," he said. "Probably." She went back to the closet. "But it'll be mine to regret." She reached up onto the high shelf, the one she never used, and her hand hit a box. She'd forgotten it existed. It was a bank box, the kind with a lid, and it was heavy in a way that made her arms remember something before her mind did. She got it down. She sat on the edge of the bed with it in her lap, and she took the lid off. On top was her badge. Emma Parker, MD, Emergency Medicine, Mercy Lake Medical Center. The photo was of a woman who was 29 and had not slept in 31 hours and was looking into the camera like she was daring it to do something about it. Emma made a sound. She had not made that sound in 11 years, and she did not have a name for it. It came from under her sternum, low and awful, and it doubled her over the box, and Ryan took one step into the room, and she put up her hand again, and he stopped. "Em," he said, "don't. Emma, come on. Don't come near me." Under the badge was her license. Under the license was a stethoscope. Under that was a stack of envelopes with the Mercy Lake logo in the corner, and they were opened, all of them, and Emma had never opened them. She lifted the first one. Her hands were not steady. She noticed that with a strange clinical detachment. Tremor, stress-induced. She had said that phrase 1,000 times to 1,000 patients. She read it. Then she read the second one, then the third. Then she looked up at her husband. "Ryan," she said, "what are these?" "Emma, There are 9 letters in this box." Her voice had changed. It was not calm anymore. It was something else, something quiet and enormous. "They're addressed to me. They've been opened, and the last one is dated 4 years ago. You need to let me explain. This one is from Anne Delgado." Emma was not looking at him. She was looking at the page. "Anne was my attending. Anne wrote to me in March of that year and said the department was restructuring and they wanted me back to run the night float. They wanted me to run it. And she says, and I'm quoting, 'I understand from Ryan that you've made your decision and I'll stop asking, but I want you to know that in 22 years I have never seen hands like yours.'" Silence. "I understand from Ryan," Emma said. "They were harassing you. They were calling me. They called this house for 2 years, Emma. 2 years, and every time it set you back, set me back." Emma stood up so fast the box hit the floor and the badge skidded across the carpet, and Ryan actually took a step backward. And that was the first time in 12 years that Ryan Whitmore had ever stepped back from his wife. Set me back from what? From what, Ryan? What was I recovering from? "You were unhappy. I was unhappy because I quit." The words tore out of her. "I was unhappy because I quit," she said again, and her voice cracked straight down the middle. "And she didn't care. She did not care at all. And you told me the unhappiness was proof that I'd been right to quit. Do you understand what you did? Every time I got sad about medicine, you told me the sadness was medicine's fault. You took the grief for losing it and you fed it back to me as evidence. For 10 years. She was shaking. "You opened my mail." "Yes." "You answered my mail." "Yes." "You told my attending physician that I had made my decision." "You had made your decision, Emma?" "I hadn't decided anything," she screamed. "I was drowning and you told everyone I was swimming." The house went silent. Somewhere below them, the rain kept going. Ryan stood in the doorway of the bedroom of a house he had bought, and he had no argument. It was the strangest sensation of his professional life. He had built a career on the certainty that there was always an argument, that every fact had another fact standing behind it, and he opened his mouth and there was nothing in it. "I did it because I loved you," he said finally. Emma laughed. It was a terrible laugh. It was the laugh of a woman standing in the wreckage of 11 years, and it went on a little too long, and when it stopped she wiped her face with the back of her wrist and looked at him, almost with pity. "No," she said. "You did it because a wife who ran a trauma bay wouldn't have had time to run your house." Ryan didn't answer. "Say it isn't true." He didn't answer. "Ryan," Emma said, "look at me and say it isn't true." He looked at the floor. Emma picked up the badge. She wiped it on her sleeve carefully, the way you handle something that belongs to someone you loved who died. She put it in the suitcase, then the license, then the stethoscope, then all 9 letters in order. She closed the suitcase. The bad wheel squealed when she set it down. "Where are you going?" Ryan said. "That's not yours anymore." "Emma, it's midnight. At least tell me." "It isn't yours anymore," she said. "Nothing about me is yours anymore. Not my address, not my mail, not my decisions, not my sadness. You had all of it, and you spent it, and it's gone." She walked past him. At the top of the stairs, she stopped. "Ryan," she said without turning around, "do you know what the worst part is? It isn't Vivian. I want you to hear this correctly, because you're going to spend a long time telling yourself it was about Vivian, and it'll be easier for you if it was, and I'm not going to let you have it." She turned her head slightly. "The worst part is that I would have said yes." "What?" "If you'd come to me in March, if you'd sat down and said, 'Emma, I don't love you anymore, I never stopped loving her. Let me go.' I would have said yes." Her voice was perfectly steady. "I'd have made you coffee first. I'd have made sure you ate. And then I'd have said yes, and I'd have wished you well, and I would have meant it because I loved you enough to want you to be happy even if it wasn't with me. That's who you were married to. That's the woman you had." She started down the stairs. "You could have had that. You could have had a clean, kind ending with a woman who would have gone to her grave speaking well of you, and instead you opened my mail." She went down, and she did not look back, and the front door closed behind her with a sound that Ryan Whitmore would hear on and off for the rest of his life. She got as far as the end of the driveway before her legs stopped working. She sat down on her suitcase in the rain like a woman who had missed a train, and she pulled out her phone with hands that would not cooperate, and she scrolled to a name she had not called in 6 years. It rang 4 times. "You have reached Dr. Sarah Mitchell," said a voice thick with sleep, "and this had better be a code or a lottery win." Sarah. The change on the other end was instant. Emma heard sheets move, heard a light click. "Emma. It's me." "Emma, honey, it's 12:50 in the morning." "I know." "Where are you? Why does it sound like, are you outside? Emma, are you outside?" And Emma Parker, 41 years old, sitting on a broken suitcase in front of a house that was not hers, opened her mouth to say something reasonable and instead heard herself say, "He opened my letters, Sarah." There was a pause. Then Sarah Mitchell said in a voice that had gone very flat and very careful, "What letters?" "Anne wrote to me. Anne wrote to me 9 times. The pause on the other end got longer, and then when Sarah spoke again, everything in Emma's chest went cold, because Sarah's voice was not surprised. "Emma," Sarah said slowly, "where are you right now? Exactly." "The end of the driveway." "Don't move. Do not move. I'm 40 minutes out." "Sarah, why aren't you surprised?" Silence. "Sarah." Emma stood up. The rain was running down the back of her collar and she didn't feel it. "Why aren't you surprised? Say something. Why aren't you surprised?" And Sarah Mitchell, who had been Emma's roommate for 4 years, and her partner in the worst night of both their lives, and the only person on earth who had never once called Emma fragile, said the thing she had been carrying for 6 years. Because it wasn't 9M. Emma stopped breathing. "It wasn't 9 letters, Sarah said. "I called that house. I called it myself. And a man told me you'd asked him to handle it, and he was very polite, and he said you were doing well, and he said you didn't want to be reminded." Her voice broke on the last word. "I believed him, Emma. God help me. For 6 years I believed him." The rain came down, and somewhere behind her in the lit window of the house, Emma could see the shape of her husband standing exactly where she had left him. Holding a phone he was not answering in a marriage that had ended 40 minutes ago and had actually ended 11 years before that. "Sarah," Emma said. Her voice had gone somewhere new. "Don't drive." "What, Emma?" "Don't drive, I'll come to you." She picked up the suitcase. The bad wheels screamed against the wet pavement, and she walked and she did not stop. "But I need you to do something for me first, and I need you to do it tonight because if I sleep, I'm going to lose my nerve, and I am never going to lose my nerve again as long as I live." "Anything," Sarah said. "Emma, anything." Emma Parker looked back at the house one time. "Find out if my license is still good." The train station at 1 in the morning was almost empty, and Emma sat on a plastic bench with her suitcase between her feet and her phone pressed so hard against her ear that it left a mark she would find hours later. "Say that again," she said. "Emma, Sarah, say it again." "I said your license is still good." Sarah Mitchell's voice had the strange, careful flatness of a woman reading a chart she did not like. "I'm looking at the state board site right now. Parker Emma R. active. Not lapsed, not suspended. Active with a renewal posted 11 months ago." Emma's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Emma, that's not possible. It's on the screen." "Sarah, I didn't renew anything." Emma stood up. She didn't remember standing up. "I haven't touched that in 11 years. There's continuing education requirements, there's fees, there's a whole somebody has to sign it. Somebody has to physically sign it." "I know. Somebody signed my name." "Emma," Sarah said, "I need you to sit back down. Somebody has been signing my name for 11 years. Sit down, honey." Emma did not sit down. She stood in the middle of a train station with rain still running out of her hair and did the math the way she used to do it out loud in a trauma bay fast, flat out of the front of her mouth, because the only way through a bad number was to say it. "Renewals every 2 years, she said. "So that's 5. 5 renewals, plus CME hours, which means somebody logged 50 hours of coursework under my name, 5 separate times and paid for it and certified it, and if any of that is false, the board doesn't just fine you. Sarah, they take your license and they refer it out. And I would never know. I would never know because I never see the mail, Emma, because he opens the mail. The silence on the line was so complete that Emma could hear Sarah's furnace kick on 400 miles away. Okay, Sarah said. Okay, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to build the whole tower at 1 a.m. on no sleep. Sarah, I said we're not going to do it, and I outrank you because I'm the only person in this conversation who slept. A breath. But I'll tell you what I think, and then you're going to get on a train. I think a man who opens a woman's mail for 11 years doesn't open it because he wants her to disappear. Men who want you to disappear throw the mail away, Em. He kept it. He kept it in a box on a shelf in the bedroom you both slept in. Emma's hand went to her mouth. And he renewed it, Sarah said, 5 times. Why? That's the question, isn't it? Sarah, why would he? Get on the train, Sarah said. Please, get on the train and come here and let me look at your face, because I have been not looking at your face for 6 years, and I am done. The train came at 1:40. Emma got on it with her suitcase and the box of letters, and she sat by the window with her forehead on the cold glass, and she did not cry. She had expected crying. It was almost insulting how little of it there was. Instead, her mind kept doing the thing it had done in her 20s, the thing she had thought was gone, the thing that had made Anne Delgado tell a room full of residents that Parker's hands were the hands you wanted on you at 3 a.m. It kept sorting. Fact. He opened 9 letters. Fact. Sarah called, and he answered and he lied. Fact. My license is current. Conclusion, pending. She got in at 4:12 in the morning, and Sarah was standing on the platform in a coat over pajamas with 2 coffees she had clearly been holding for a long time because when Emma took hers, it was cold. Sarah looked at her for 1 long second. Oh, Sarah said. Oh, Em, don't. I'm not. You're doing the face. I'm allowed the face. It's 4 in the morning, and I drove here in slippers. Sarah took the suitcase handle out of her hand. Then she stopped because the wheel screamed, and she looked down at it, and something went across her face that was worse than pity. Is this the Newark bag? It's the Newark bag. You still have the Newark bag. It was in the closet. Emma, this bag has a piece of duct tape on it that I put there. I know. I put that there in 2009. I know. And that was when Emma finally cracked standing on a train platform at 4:12 in the morning. Not over her husband, not over Vivian, not over 12 years, but over a strip of duct tape that a friend had stuck to a suitcase when they were both 28 and had believed absolutely and without argument that they were going to be great. Sarah held her and did not say anything smart, which was the entire reason Emma had called her instead of anyone else on earth. By 5:30, they had the letters out on Sarah's kitchen table in order, and Sarah had read all 9 of them twice, and she was on her 3rd pass when she stopped and put her finger on one line and did not move. Em, what? Read this. Emma leaned over. I've read it. Read it out loud. Sarah, out loud, please. Emma read. I understand from Ryan that you've made your decision, and I'll stop asking, but I want you to know that in 22 years, I have never seen hands like yours. I know. It's the worst sentence I've ever... Not that part. Sarah's finger moved down. This part. Emma read it, and the room tilted. I'm glad the board matter is behind you, she read. You should never have had to carry that at all. Silence. Sarah, Emma said. What board matter? Sarah closed her eyes. Sarah, I need you to sit down. I have been sitting down since 1 in the morning, and every single time I sit down, someone tells me something that makes me stand back up, Emma said. What board matter? Sarah opened her eyes, and Emma watched a woman she had known for 20 years make a decision, and she watched it cost her. The Halloran case, Sarah said. The name went through Emma like a wire. No, Emma said. No, There was no board matter with Halloran. There was a review, there was an internal review, and it was closed, and it was nothing. It was Sarah, it was a 71-year-old man with a dissection. He was going to die in the driveway. He was dead before he got to me. There was a complaint, Sarah said. Emma stopped. The family filed, Sarah said. 3 weeks after, and it went to the board, and there was an investigation, a real one, and it lasted 14 months. That's not true. Emma, that's not true. I would have known they would have sent me. She heard it come out of her own mouth, and she stopped dead, and she put her hand flat on the table. They would have sent me letters. Yes, Sarah said. They would have. The kitchen was very quiet. How do you know this? Emma whispered. Because I testified. Emma's head came up. I testified, Sarah said. I gave a statement. In the spring, 14 months after, they asked me about your judgment and your timing and whether I had ever seen you hesitate, and I told them what I'd told anyone who ever asked, which is that I would let you cut me open in a parking lot with a pocket knife. Sarah's voice was thick now. And I asked where you were, Emma. I asked why you weren't there, and they told me your representative had appeared on your behalf. Your representative? I don't have a representative. You're married to one, Sarah said. Emma stood up so fast the chair went over backward. She walked into the living room and stood with her back to the doorway, and Sarah let her have it, let her have a full minute of it, and did not follow. They cleared you, Sarah said from the kitchen. Emma, I want you to hear that. They cleared you completely, unanimous. There's a finding, it's public record. It's got a docket number, and it says the standard of care was met and exceeded, and it says... Sarah's voice caught. It says the reviewing physicians noted that Dr. Parker's documentation was, and I remember it because I read it 40 times, exemplary under conditions that would have overwhelmed most practitioners with twice her experience. Emma stood in the dark of a stranger's living room with her arms crossed over her stomach like she'd been hit there. 14 months, she said. Yes. He watched me for 14 months. Yes. He watched me stop sleeping. He watched me stop eating. He watched me... Her voice went. She got it back. Sarah, I thought I was losing my mind. Do you understand? I couldn't explain why it wouldn't let go of me. Every doctor loses a patient, every single one. And I lost one, and it followed me for a year, and I couldn't say why, and I asked Ryan. I actually asked him. I sat on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m, and I asked my husband, what is wrong with me? Why won't this stop? And she couldn't finish it. What did he say? Sarah said quietly. He said the job was doing it to me. Sarah made a sound like she'd been kicked. He said, this is what it does to people, Em. This is what it's going to keep doing to you. And I believed him. I believed him because there was nothing else on the table. I didn't know I was carrying an investigation. I thought I was carrying a defect. Emma turned around. Her face was terrible. He let me think I was defective, Sarah, for 14 months. So I'd quit. Sarah did not argue. That was the worst part. Sarah, who had argued with Emma about every single thing since 2006, who would fight her about parking spaces and antibiotics and the correct way to eat a sandwich, sat at her own kitchen table and did not argue. And then when it cleared, Emma said slowly, when it cleared and the letter came saying I was fine, saying I was better than fine. He'd already gotten what he wanted, Sarah said. I'd already resigned. Yes. I resigned in February. Emma's hands had started shaking again. It cleared in April, didn't it? April 9th. 2 months. Emma, I missed it by 2 months. Emma laughed, and it was not a good laugh. 11 years. 11 years of thinking I broke, and I missed it by 2 months, and my husband knew, and he made me coffee that April. Sarah, I remember that April. He came home with flowers. He said he was proud of me for starting over. She had to stop. She put her hand on the wall. Sarah got up then. She came in and she stood next to Emma without touching her because she knew better. Ask me the question, Sarah said. What question? The one you've been not asking since 1 a.m. Emma closed her eyes. Why did he renew it? She said. Yes. Why would he spend 11 years and 5 renewals and God knows how much money keeping alive the one thing he took away from me? Say it, Sarah said. You already know. You've known since the platform. Say it. Emma opened her eyes. Because he knew he was wrong, she said. Sarah nodded once. He knew, Emma said, and her voice went to pieces, and she let it. He knew the whole time, every renewal. Every 2 years he sat down at a desk and signed my name to keep my license breathing, because some part of him knew that what he did was so unforgivable that he wanted a door left open in case he ever got brave enough. And he never got brave enough. He never got brave enough. No, Sarah said. He got Vivian instead. At 7:15 in the morning, Emma's phone rang. She looked at the screen and she went completely still. Who? Sarah said. Diane? His mother? His mother? Don't answer it. Emma answered it. Emma, sweetheart. Diane Whitmore's voice was warm as bathwater. It had been warm for 12 years. I heard. Oh, honey, I have been up all night. Have you? I want you to know that this family loves you. Whatever happens with Ryan, whatever he's decided, you will always be. Diane, Emma said, how long have you known? A pause. Half a second. Beautifully handled. Known what, dear? And Emma, standing in Sarah Mitchell's living room at 7:15 in the morning on no sleep, heard herself laugh. You're good, she said. I never noticed before. That was really good. Emma, half a second, that's all you took. Half a second to decide which lie to use. Emma sat down on the arm of the couch. I sat across from you at 400 dinners, and I never noticed you were doing that the entire time. I think you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm awake. Emma's voice was pleasant. It was completely pleasant, and Sarah, watching from the doorway, felt the hair on her arms stand up. Diane, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it, and then I'm going to hang up, and you'll never hear from me again, and I think that's a fair trade for one honest sentence at the end of 12 years. Silence. Ask, Diane said, and her voice had changed. The bathwater was gone. The board investigation, Emma said. Halloran, 14 months. Did you know? The pause was longer this time. Yes, Diane said. Emma closed her eyes. Even now, even after everything, some idiot part of her had wanted the answer to be no. Did you tell him to hide it? No. Did you tell him to keep hiding it? And Diane Whitmore, 73 years old, sitting in a house in Winnetka, with a photograph of her son on the mantel, said, I told him it would be a kindness. Emma didn't move. You have to understand what you looked like, Diane said. And now she was talking fast, and Emma understood with a jolt that the woman had been waiting 11 years to say this. You were disappearing in front of us. You'd lost 20 pounds. You were gray. Ryan would call me crying. Emma, my son, who has not cried since he was 9 years old, would call me at midnight crying because he didn't know how to make you eat. And I told him yes. I told him. I said, that girl is being destroyed by that hospital, and if you can take one weight off her back, take it. That wasn't a weight, Emma said. That was my life. You were dying. I was fighting. They looked the same, Diane snapped. And there it was, finally the real voice under the warm one. They looked exactly the same from the outside, and don't you dare pretend they didn't, because we were the ones on the outside. Emma let that sit. Then she said very quietly, and in April when it cleared, when you found out I was innocent and I'd already quit, what did you say to him then? Silence. Diane. I told him not to tell you, Diane said. Why? Because you'd have gone back. And there it was, clean, complete, 11 years and 6 words delivered in a warm voice by a woman who had signed every one of Emma's birthday cards with love. Thank you, Emma said. Emma. No, I mean it. That's the honest sentence. That's what I asked for, and you gave it to me, and I'm going to keep it. Emma stood up. Diane, listen carefully. Your son is going to marry Vivian Cole. It's going to fail. And when it fails, he's going to call you at midnight crying because that's the only place he's ever been allowed to be a person, and you're going to tell him it was her fault, and he's going to believe you because he always does. Don't. And you're both going to spend the rest of your lives, Emma said, being confused about why nothing lasts. She hung up. She stood there for a second with the phone in her hand. Then she turned around, and Sarah was standing in the doorway with her hand over her mouth. What? Emma said. Nothing. Sarah. It's just... Sarah lowered her hand. That's the first time I've heard you in 11 years. At 9:40, Ryan called. Emma let it go to voicemail. He called again. She let it go. He called a third time and Sarah said, "Oh, for God's sake," and picked up the phone and answered it herself. "Whitmore Residence," Sarah said. "Department of Nobody's Home." Sarah. "Hi, Ryan. Is she with you?" Sarah, as she put her on. "Put her on right now." "See, I would," Sarah said. "Except last time I called your house, a man told me she didn't want to be reminded. So I'm going to go ahead and handle it, since apparently that's what we do." Dead silence. Then low. "That's not fair." "Ryan Whitmore," Sarah said, "I want you to think very hard about which one of us gets to say the word fair this morning." Emma took the phone. "Ryan." "Emma. Oh, thank God. Emma, listen to me, whatever she's telling you." "April 9th, Emma said. The line went silent. It went silent for so long that Sarah leaned in to check that the call was still connected, and it was, and that was how they both knew. "Emma," Ryan said, and his voice was not a lawyer's voice anymore. "Emma, please. Say the date back to me. Don't do this on the phone. Say the date." "April 9th, he said. "What happened on April 9th? "You know what happened." "I want you to say it," Emma said. "I have waited 11 years to hear a true sentence out of your mouth, and you're going to give me one. What happened on April 9th? And Ryan Whitmore, alone in a kitchen with an envelope on the counter that his wife had already signed, said, "You were cleared." Louder. "You were cleared." It broke out of him. "You were cleared unanimous. They said you were the best they'd seen. They said it in writing, and I read it in the driveway in my car, and I sat there for 40 minutes, and then I put it in a box, and I came inside, and you'd made dinner." His voice snapped. "You'd made dinner, Emma. You were standing in the kitchen humming. You'd stopped humming for a year and a half, and you were humming, and I stood in the doorway with that letter in my coat, and I thought if I give her this, she's gone." "Yes," Emma said. "I would have gone." "I know. To the hospital? To work? Not to another man, Ryan, not away from you. To work. I would have come home after." "You wouldn't have," he said. "Not really." "You don't get to know that. That was mine to find out." "Emma." "That was mine," she said, and her voice finally cracked and 11 years came out of her in one line. "That was mine to find out, and you took it, and you didn't take it in a moment. You didn't take it in a rage. You took it over 11 years in 100 small decisions, and every single one of them you made in a driveway alone with a letter in your coat." The sound Ryan made was not a word. "And the license," Emma said. He stopped. "You renewed my license," she said, 5 times. "Emma, why?" She heard him breathe. "Because I knew," he said. Emma sat down on the floor. She just sat down right there in Sarah's living room with the phone against her ear. "Every 2 years, Ryan said. "Every 2 years the form came, and I'd sit down with it, and I'd think, this is it. This is the year I tell her. And I'd sign her name, and I'd think, at least it's still there. At least I haven't done the last thing. And then I'd put it back in the box, and I'd go, be your husband." A ragged breath. "I've been keeping a door open for 11 years so I could tell myself I wasn't a man who closed one. Ryan, I know. Do you understand what you just described?" "Emma." "You described a man who knew," Emma said. "Not a man who was confused. Not a man who was protecting his wife. A man who knew exactly what he'd done so precisely, so completely, that he built a maintenance schedule around it." The silence was total. "What do you want?" Ryan said finally. "Tell me what you want. Money, the house, all of it. I don't care, just tell me what you want and it's yours. I'll have it drawn tonight." "I want the docket number," Emma said. "What?" "The finding, April 9th. It's public record and I could pull it myself, but I want you to send it to me. I want it to come from your hand." Emma got up off the floor. "I want you to sit down at your desk and find it, and type my name in the address line and send me the piece of paper that says I was never broken. You've had it for 11 years. It's the only thing of yours I want." "Emma, that's..." He was struggling. "Why? Why does it matter who sends it?" "Because you owe me 11 years and I'm only going to collect 1 email." Silence. "And Ryan," she said, "after that, Don't contact me again. Not on my birthday, not when your mother dies, not when it goes bad with Vivian and you get lonely at 2 in the morning and you start reaching for the phone, which you will. And I want you to be very clear about this because you're going to spend a lot of time being unclear about it on purpose. Emma, when you reach for that phone, she said, the woman you're reaching for doesn't exist. She stopped existing at 12:50 this morning in a driveway. You didn't divorce her, Ryan. You never even met her. You met the woman she agreed to be, and then you built a whole life on top of her, and you kept her paperwork current in a box on a shelf. Her voice was steady, utterly steady. Send the docket number. She hung up. The email came at 11:04. There was no message in the body. There was no subject line. There was one attachment, and Emma opened it on Sarah's laptop, with Sarah standing behind her chair, with both hands on her shoulders, and she read her own name. In the matter of the complaint against Emma R. Parker, MD, finding of the board. Standard of care met and exceeded. Unanimous. Emma read it 4 times. The 5th time, she read one line out loud and her voice did not shake at all. The reviewing physicians note that Dr. Parker's documentation was exemplary under conditions that would have overwhelmed most practitioners with twice her experience. She sat back. Em? Sarah said. I know. You okay? No, Emma said. And then, after a second, Sarah, do you remember what I said that night after Halloran, in the parking lot? You said you should have gotten him to the table sooner. And what did you say? I said there wasn't a surgeon on this earth who could have saved him, and you knew it. And what did I say? Sarah's hands tightened on her shoulders. You said, then why do I feel like this? Sarah said. Yeah. Emma stared at the screen. Because I was under investigation and nobody told me. She closed the laptop. Then she sat there for a long, long moment, and Sarah waited, and Sarah would say later that she felt it happen, physically, felt it the way you feel, a pressure change before a storm. Sarah, Emma said, how bad am I? What? Clinically. Right now. If I walked into a bay this afternoon, how bad am I? Sarah didn't answer for a second. Don't be kind, Emma said. Please, everyone's been kind to me for 11 years and look at me. Bad, Sarah said. You'd be bad. 11 years is 11 years. Everything's changed. Protocols, drugs, airway imaging, everything. You'd know it all in 6 months of nothing but work. But for 6 months, you'd be the least useful person in the room, and you'd hate it more than anything you've ever hated. And nobody in Chicago will touch you. Nobody. Not with an 11-year gap. They won't even read the application. Okay. Emma. No, that's good. That's useful. Who would what? Who would read it? Emma said. And Sarah Mitchell went very quiet. Sarah. There's one, Sarah said slowly. There's exactly one, and I don't like it. And I want that on the record before I say it. Say it. There's a program that takes people nobody else will take, Sarah said, because nobody else will go. Trauma rescue, remote medicine. They fly out to villages you can't drive to. Weather that kills people. 8 months of the year you can't get a patient out at all, so whatever's wrong with them, you fix it there with what's in your bag alone. She swallowed. They're always short. They're always short because it eats people alive, and they'll take a 41-year-old with an 11-year gap and a spotless board finding because they have to. Where? Sarah didn't answer. Sarah, where? Alaska, Sarah said. Emma didn't move. And before you say anything, Sarah said fast, I want you to hear the whole thing because I know exactly what your face is doing, and I've hated that face since 2007. Em, this isn't a comeback. This isn't a story. People wash out of this in the first 6 weeks. Not weak people, good people. Because there's no attending down the hall, there's no consult, there's no second opinion. It's you and a radio, and sometimes the radio doesn't work. And a man is bleeding out on a floor, and you are the only doctor for 300 miles. And if you freeze, she stopped. Say it. If you freeze, Sarah said, he dies, and you have to live in that village for the rest of the winter with his family. The room was silent. Emma sat with her hands flat on the closed laptop. How long is the application? She said. Emma. How long? They interview in 2 weeks, Sarah said. In person, In Anchorage. And M? Sarah came around the chair and crouched down in front of her and took both her hands. Listen to me. Listen. I love you. I have loved you for 20 years and I let a man take you from me over a telephone, and I will never forgive myself for that as long as I live. So I need you to hear this from the one person who has never lied to you. Okay? If you go up there to prove something to Ryan Whitmore, Sarah said, you will die. Emma looked at her. You'll die, Sarah said. Not metaphorically. It's 40 below, and the wind reads your mail. It does not care that your husband was cruel to you. It does not care about your board finding. It doesn't care that you were the best hands Anne Delgado ever saw. It'll kill you exactly as dead as anybody else, and it won't even be interesting. Emma turned her hands over and held Sarah's. Sarah, she said, I'm not going for Ryan. Then why? And Emma Parker, 41 years old, sitting in her friend's kitchen 12 hours after signing away 12 years of her life, said the truest sentence she had spoken since she was 30. Because I want to find out if it's still in my hands, she said, and there's only one place left on earth that'll let me look. The application took 9 days, and on the 4th day, Emma stopped sleeping again, and this time she recognized it for what it was and did not call it a defect. You're up, Sarah said at 3:20 in the morning, standing in her own kitchen doorway in the same pajamas she'd worn to the train platform. I'm up. Since when? Since 1. Emma. It's not the bad kind, Emma said. I checked. I've been checking every hour like a good little patient. It's not the bad kind, it's the other one. What other one? Emma turned the laptop around. Sarah leaned in and read what was on the screen and then looked at her. Is that a pediatric airway algorithm? It's the 2019 revision. It's 3 in the morning. They changed the cuff tube thresholds, Emma said. Sarah, they changed them in 2010. I have been walking around for 16 years with a number in my head that would hurt a child, and I didn't know. And if you had woken me up at any point in the last decade and asked me, I'd have said it with total confidence. She rubbed her eyes. That's the thing nobody tells you. It's not that I forgot, it's that I remember perfectly. I remember all of it perfectly, and half of it's wrong now. Sarah sat down across from her. That's the whole problem, isn't it? Sarah said. That's the whole problem. Confidence with a bad number is worse than no confidence. Confidence with a bad number kills people, Emma said. No confidence just embarrasses you. Sarah studied her for a moment. Okay, she said. Then let's do it right. I'm taking my vacation. Sarah, I have 11 weeks banked because I have no life which you would know if you'd called me in 6 years, and I'm going to spend 2 of them making you hate me. Sarah stood up and went for the coffee. You've got 9 days. I'm going to teach you every protocol that changed since 2015, and you're going to fail at all of it in front of me instead of in front of them, and by the end of it, you're going to want to hit me with a chair. Emma looked at her. What? Sarah said. Nothing. Say it. You're going to make me do it out loud, Emma said. Aren't you? Every single one. I hate that. I know you hate it. You've hated it since 2007. You hate it because you can't hide when you say it out loud, and you have been hiding for 11 years. So yes, Emma, you're going to say every single one of them out loud to my face, and when you're wrong, I'm going to tell you you're wrong in exactly the tone you're going to hear from a nurse in Bethel who's been doing this since you were doing charity galas. Sarah handed her the cup. Drink it. We start now. It was worse than Emma expected. It was so much worse. By day 2, she had gotten a drug dose wrong that would have been actionable, and Sarah had said nothing, just written it on a legal pad, and the sound of the pen had been the worst sound Emma had heard in 11 years. By day 4, she'd gotten 22 in a row right, and then blanked completely on a sequence she'd once run in her sleep. And she'd said, I'm sorry, and Sarah had said, don't apologize to me. Apologize to the imaginary 60-year-old whose heart just stopped while you said sorry. And Emma had walked out of the room and stood in the hallway with her hands over her face for 90 seconds and then come back in and sat down and said, again. By day 6, Emma was faster than Sarah on 3 of the algorithms. Sarah put the pen down and didn't say anything. What? Emma said. Nothing. Sarah, what? You just did the whole thing without looking up, Sarah said. Both branches, including the pediatric weight-based, which you did not know existed on Tuesday. So on Tuesday you didn't know it existed? Emma shrugged. It's Thursday. And Sarah Mitchell put her hand over her mouth and turned around and stood at her own sink for a full minute with her back to the room, and Emma had the sense not to say anything at all. On day 7 at 8:15 in the evening, Emma's phone lit up with a number she didn't know. She almost didn't answer. Emma Parker. Emma. A woman's voice, older, unhurried, and it went through Emma like a spike because she knew it. She knew it instantly, 11 years, and she knew it in 2 syllables. It's Anne. Emma's hand went to the table. Anne. You sound like you sat down. I did sit down. Good, because I have things to say and I'm 74 and I don't have the patience to say them twice. A rustle of paper. I got a call from a program in Anchorage this afternoon. They're doing reference checks on an applicant. Emma closed her eyes. Anne. 11 years. Anne Delgado said, and I find out you're alive because a woman in Alaska calls me about a background form. I know. Do you? Anne, I need to explain something. You don't need to explain anything, Anne said, and her voice snapped like a folded towel. I know what happened. I found out in 2018, and I have been carrying it around like a stone in my shoe ever since. So let's not spend our first conversation in 11 years with you apologizing to me for something a man did to you. Emma couldn't speak. 2018, she finally said. A colleague mentioned in passing that Dr. Parker had asked to be left alone, and I said that's what her husband told me. And this colleague said, funny, that's what her husband told me too. A pause. I've been in this business 50 years, Emma. You learn that when a message reaches you through exactly one door every time you should go look at the door. You knew for 8 years. I suspected for 8 years. Why didn't you call me? I did, Anne said. Emma's stomach dropped. Twice more, Anne said. After the 9, in 2018 and in 2021. He was very polite both times. He told me you'd built a beautiful life and that hearing my voice set you back for weeks. And Emma, I want you to hear the ugly part because I'm too old to soften it, and you deserve the whole thing. Her voice went rough. I believed him, not because he was convincing, because it was easier, because if you had truly walked away from medicine and were happy, then I hadn't lost you, you'd just left. And if he was lying, then I'd let one of the 2 or 3 best young physicians I ever trained get talked out of her own hands by a man in a suit, and I would have had to do something about it. So I chose the version where I got to keep sleeping. The kitchen was silent. Anne, Emma said, don't. Anne, that's 11 letters. 11, yes, Anne said. I counted 2. Emma pressed her hand flat against her mouth for a second. They asked me about the freeze, Anne said abruptly. What? Anchorage. On the reference call. They asked about the Halloran night, whether you hesitated. Emma's whole body went cold. What did you tell them? The truth, Anne said. I told them you hesitated for 3 seconds. Anne. And then I told them. Anne said that in 50 years, the only doctors I've ever met who never hesitate are the ones who don't understand what they're holding. Hesitation isn't the enemy, Emma. Hesitation is the price of comprehension. The question was never whether you'd freeze. The question is what you do on the 4th second. Emma sat there. You froze for 3 seconds, Anne said. And then you opened that man's chest in a room with the wrong equipment, and you were right about every single thing you did, and a board of 11 physicians said so unanimously, and your husband put it in a box. Anne. They're going to hire you, Anne said. The woman I spoke to had already decided before she called me. She was calling to see if I'd tell her not to. Would you have 11 years ago, number 10 days ago, no. A long breath. Emma, I'm going to say the hard one now. Are you sitting down? You already asked me that. Sit down harder. Emma almost laughed. You should not go, Anne said. Emma's smile died. What? You should not go, Anne said. And I want to be precise, because you're going to want to make this simple, and it isn't simple. I'm not saying you can't. Your hands are your hands. I'm saying that a woman who has been told for 11 years that she is fragile will accept any assignment that proves she isn't. And there is no assignment on this earth that proves it, because there is no bottom to that question. You will always be able to find something harder. That's not medicine. That's a bleed. Emma's throat closed. You want to know if it's still in your hands? Anne said. Fine. That's a real question. But Emma, you could answer that question in a residency clinic in Skokie. You picked the one place on earth that will kill you if the answer is no. Because if you fail there, Anne said, you get to be dead instead of ordinary. And after 11 years in that man's house, I think ordinary is the thing you're actually afraid of. Emma didn't answer for a long, long time. Anne, she said finally, and her voice was very quiet. Is that a no? No, Anne said. That's a mirror. Go if you're going, but go with your eyes open, and don't you dare go up there and be brave. I've buried brave ones. Be careful. Careful is what I trained you to be. The interview was in Anchorage on a Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning, and Emma had run it in her head 300 times, and it lasted 11 minutes. The woman across the table was named Ruth Okalik, and she was 56, and she had a stack of files and did not open Emma's. You've got an 11-year gap, Ruth said. Yes. Explain it. I quit. Why? Because my husband hid a board investigation from me for 14 months and let me believe I was losing my mind, and by the time it cleared, I had already resigned. Ruth's face did not change. That's a very complete answer. You asked. Most people say family reasons. I'm not going to lie to you at 9 in the morning, Emma said, because if you hire me, I'm going to be alone with a dying stranger at some point, and there won't be anyone in the room to catch me lying then either. So we might as well find out now if you can stand me. Ruth looked at her for 4 seconds. You know what this is, Ruth said. Somebody's told you. Dr. Mitchell told me. Did she tell you the hard part? She told me if I freeze, he dies, and I have to spend the winter in the same village as his family. That's not the hard part, Ruth said. Emma stopped. The hard part, Ruth said, is that you'll do everything right and he'll die anyway, and you'll spend the winter in the same village as his family. Anyone can survive being wrong. Being wrong has a lesson in it. It's the other one that empties people out. She leaned back. You know what my washout rate is. First 8 weeks, 40%. And every one of them was competent, and every one of them told me in this chair that they understood. I don't think I understand, Emma said. Ruth blinked. I've been away 11 years, Emma said. I'd be lying if I said I understood. I understood in 2011. What I know now is that I want to find out, and that I know exactly what I'm bad at, which is more than I could have said at 30. And what are you bad at? Speed, Emma said. Recall speed. I know the material. It's not automatic. There's a half second between the question and the answer, and half a second is a lifetime. How long to close it? 6 months of nothing else. Who told you 6 months? Dr. Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell's optimistic, Ruth said. She stood up. Simulation lab Monday. 2 weeks of it. If you clear, you go out with a senior for a season. If you don't clear, you go home and I'll write you a letter that gets you into a residency program anywhere in the lower 48, because you're right about one thing. She picked up her files. Nobody sits in that chair and says, I don't think I understand. Everybody says they understand. That's why 40% of them wash out. At the door, she stopped. Dr. Parker? Yes. Delgado told me about the 3 seconds. Emma's chin came up. I've been doing this 30 years, Ruth said. You want to know what I'd worry about if you'd never frozen at all? She shouldered the door. Everything. The simulation lab was the worst 2 weeks of Emma Parker's life, and that included the last 2 weeks, which was saying something. Day 1, she was the slowest person in the room by a margin that was almost comic. There were 4 of them. The other 3 were between 29 and 34. One of them, a kid named Tobias Reyes, kept glancing at her the way you glance at someone's mother who's wandered into the wrong building. Day 2, she got a call sequence wrong and a mannequin died, and Tobias said, not unkindly, It's okay. I did that one my first week. And Emma smiled and said thank you, and then went into the bathroom and stood with both hands on the sink for 4 minutes. Day 3 at 2:15 in the afternoon, Ruth ran a scenario, and Emma froze. Not 3 seconds. 9. She stood there for 9 seconds with her hands over her chest and the numbers rolling, and she could not make her mouth open. And it was not that she didn't know. That was the horror she knew. She knew the whole tree. She could see it laid out in her head like a map. And there was a hand on her throat, and it was not fear. It was something worse and older. It was permission. Some part of her, some deep 11-year-old reflex, was waiting for someone to tell her she was allowed. Ruth called it at 9 seconds. Nobody said anything. That was the worst part. Not one person in the room said a word, and Tobias looked at the floor, and Emma took her gloves off and walked out. She got as far as the hallway, and then she sat down on the floor with her back against a wall, and she pulled out her phone, and she called Sarah. "Talk," Sarah said. "No, hello. 9 seconds. Sarah didn't answer. 9, Sarah. "Okay. Say something. I'm thinking." "Don't think, just..." Emma's voice broke. "Sarah, I knew it. That's what I need you to understand. I knew the whole algorithm. It was right there. I could see it. And I stood there like a..." She stopped. "I was waiting for someone to tell me I could." The silence stretched. Then Sarah said very quietly, "Em, do you know what he did to you?" "I know exactly what he did to me." "No, you don't. You know the facts. You don't know the injury." Sarah's voice was shaking. 12 years, every single time you had an instinct, a man in your house told you it was a symptom. Every time you wanted something, he told you the wanting was the problem. He didn't take your job, Emma. He took the wire between knowing and doing. He cut it. And you're sitting on a floor in Anchorage, furious at yourself for having a severed wire. Emma put her hand over her eyes. "So how do I fix it?" she said. "You don't fix it, you outvote it." "What does that mean?" "It means you're never going to stop hearing him," Sarah said. "That's not how brains work. He's in there. He's going to be in there when you're 80. The question is whether he's the only voice in the room, and right now he is M. He's the only one because you fired everybody else. So what do I... "Put someone else in there," Sarah said. "Anne, Ruth, me, I don't care. Next time you feel the hand on your throat, you say a name out loud. Out loud, Emma, with your mouth in front of everybody, and let them think you're crazy. Because that half second where you're waiting for permission, fill it. Fill it with a voice that isn't his." Emma sat on the floor for a moment. "That's the stupidest thing you've ever said to me," she said. "Yeah. It's going to work, isn't it?" "Probably," Sarah said. Day 4 at 10:40 in the morning, Ruth ran the same scenario. Emma's hands went out and the hand closed on her throat, and she heard the door open in the back of her skull, and she opened her mouth and said loud, flat to nobody, "Delgado." The room went absolutely still, and Emma Parker started talking. She talked for 6 minutes without stopping. She called the sequence, she called the doses, she called the timing, she called the things she'd blanked on Tuesday. And when Tobias handed her the wrong size, she said, "No, the next one down cuffed, he's 4," without even looking up. And when it was over, the mannequin was alive and the room was silent, and Ruth O'Colick was standing in the doorway with her arms folded. "What did you say?" Ruth said. "When at the start you said a name." Emma peeled her gloves off. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't get the second one. "Delgado," she said. "Why?" "Because for 11 years there's been a man's voice in the half second before I do anything," Emma said, "and I'm evicting him." Ruth looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "Do it every time, Pen," and walked out. By day 9, Emma was second in the room. By day 12, she was first, and Tobias Reyes, who was 29 and had been kind to her out of pity, stopped her in the corridor and said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How long were you out?" 11 years. He shook his head. "That's not possible." "It is." "No, ma'am, I mean it's not possible because I've been in it for 4 straight years and you're calling things I don't call." He was almost angry about it. "Where did you learn that thing with the pressure? That's not in the book." "It's in the 2009 book." "What?" "They took it out in 2012, Emma said. "It came back in 2021 with a different name. You learned the new name, I learned the old one." She shrugged. "Turns out being ancient is worth something about 1 time in 50. Tobias laughed, and then he stopped laughing because he looked at her, and something in her face was not laughing at all. "Are you okay?" he said. "Ask me in a month," Emma said. The call came on a Tuesday in the 4th week at 4:52 in the afternoon, and Emma was in the air 90 minutes later with a senior named Grady Voss, who had said maybe 40 words to her since they met. He said one more on the way out. "Weather's turning." "How bad?" "Bad enough that we're not coming back tonight," Grady said. "So whatever you brought is what you have." The patient was 34, and his name was Peter Alec, and he had gone through the ice with a snow machine, and the machine had come down on him, and by the time they got to him, he had been on a floor for 2 hours, with a village health aide holding pressure with both hands and her whole body weight, and she had been holding it for 2 hours, and her name was Marcy, and she was 23 years old, and she had not moved. "How long?" Emma said. 2 hours and 10, Marcy said. Her voice was completely level. "I got the time. I wrote it on my arm." Emma looked at her forearm. There were 4 times written on it in pen. "That's good," Emma said. "That's very good. Don't let go." "I'm not going to let go." "I know you're not." Grady was on the radio, and the radio was doing nothing, and Emma heard him say, "Negative on the transfer, they're grounded." And she heard the sentence, and she felt the hand close on her throat, the whole hand, all of it, and she opened her mouth. "Delgado," she said. Grady's head came around. "What?" "Nothing. Marcy, on my count, you're going to shift your left hand 2 inches lateral, and I'm going to be under it before you finish moving. Do you understand?" "Yes. Don't guess. If you don't understand, say so, and I will not be angry." "I understand." "Grady, I need you on his head." "Doctor." "Grady." Emma didn't look up. "I need you on his head, and I need you to tell me every 15 seconds what you see. And if you disagree with me at any point, I want you to say it out loud immediately, and I will not take it personally, and I will stop and listen. Are we clear?" There was a pause. And Grady Voss, who had watched 11 people wash out of this job and had stopped learning their names in 2019, moved to the head of a dying man and said, "Yes, ma'am." They worked for 4 hours and 40 minutes. The radio came back once at 8:15, long enough for a voice to say the weather would not lift until morning and nothing was flying. And then it went out again for good, and Marcy said, "Doctor," and Emma said, "I heard it," and did not stop. At 9:04, Peter Alec's pressure dropped, and Emma did something with a chest tube and a piece of equipment that Grady would later describe to Ruth O'Callagh twice in detail because he could not stop thinking about it. At 9:40, he stabilized. At 11:30, Emma was still on the floor beside him, awake with 2 fingers on his wrist because she did not trust the machine, and the machine was the only one they had. At 1:15 in the morning, Marcy Alec, who had not left the room, either said quietly, "You didn't ask if he was my brother." Emma didn't look up. "I know." "How?" "Because you wrote the times on your arm," Emma said. "People do that when it's family. When it's a stranger, they trust the clock." The room was quiet. "He is," Marcy said. "I know." "You knew for 4 hours." "Yes." "Why didn't you say anything?" And Emma Parker, 41 years old, sitting on a floor at the edge of the world with her fingers on a stranger's pulse, said, "Because you were doing your job perfectly, and if I'd said it out loud, you'd have had to be his sister instead. I wasn't going to take that from you until he was safe." Marcy Alec started to cry, then silently, and did not move her hands until dawn. The plane came at 6:20. At 6:45 in the air, with Peter Alec's stable on a board between them, Grady Voss finally looked across at her. "Parker." "Yeah." "That thing you said. At the start." "Delgado." "Who's Delgado?" Emma looked out at the light coming up over 400 miles of nothing. "She's the woman who told me I was allowed," Emma said. Grady nodded slowly like that was a perfectly ordinary answer. Then he said, "Ruth's going to ask me for a report." "I know. You want to know what I'm going to say?" "Not really." "I'm going to say I've been doing this 19 years, Grady said, and last night was the first time I ever watched somebody get better at this in real time. Hour by hour. You were slow at 7. You were not slow at 9. He shook his head. "You want to tell me what I was actually looking at?" And Emma, who had not slept in 26 hours, who had a dead man's brother alive on a board at her feet, who had signed away 12 years of her life in a kitchen 6 weeks earlier, and walked out into the rain with a broken suitcase, said the only true thing she had. "You were watching a woman find out she was never the problem," she said. Grady Voss wrote his report on a Tuesday, and 11 months later, a woman from a magazine called Ruth Okalik and asked to spend a season with the program, and Ruth said no, and the woman came anyway. Her name was Delia Frank, and she was persistent in the way that people who are good at their jobs are persistent. And she flew out to Bethel in March and stayed 6 weeks and did not write about Emma Parker at all. She wrote about Marcy Alec. The piece ran in October under the title, "The Woman with the Times on Her Arm," and it was about village health aides, and it was 11,000 words long, and Emma appeared in it exactly 4 times, and one of those times was a photograph she had not agreed to and had not known was taken. She was on a floor. She had 2 fingers on a man's wrist. The caption said, "Dr. Emma Parker, 4 hours into a 9-hour hold, Kwethluk, February." Ryan Whitmore saw it at 7:10 on a Wednesday morning in a dentist's waiting room in Winnetka. He did not recognize her at first. That was what he would keep coming back to later in the long, slow years afterward. He looked at the photograph for 4 full seconds before he understood, and in those 4 seconds, he had a thought, an idle, ordinary thought, the kind of thought a man has in a waiting room, and the thought was, "God, look at her hands." Then the room went out from under him. He read all 11,000 words standing up. A hygienist called his name twice. He did not hear it. At 7:34, he called his mother. "Ryan, have you seen it?" "Seen what, sweetheart?" "The magazine." His voice was wrong. He could hear it being wrong, and he couldn't stop it. There's a piece, there's an article, it's about Alaska, and there's a picture of Mom, there's a picture of Emma. A pause. "Yes," Diane said. Ryan stopped walking. "You've seen it. Beth sent it to me on Monday." "Monday?" "Yes." "It's Wednesday," Ryan said. "I know what day it is. You've had it for 2 days. Ryan, you had it for 2 days and you didn't call me." And what Diane said exactly what I have said. Ryan stood in a parking lot in Winnetka with a phone against his ear. "You'd have said she's in Alaska," he said. "You'd have said she's alive. You'd have said the woman I was married to for 12 years is on a floor in a village at the end of the earth with her fingers on a dying man's wrist, and there's a photograph of her and Mom. She looks—" He stopped. "Say it," Diane said. "She looks like she did before." "Yes, she looks exactly like she did before." "No," Diane said. "That's what I want you to understand, and I want you to hear it from me and not find it out slowly over 10 years, because I don't have 10 years, and neither does your marriage. She doesn't look like she did before." Her voice was flat. "I have the picture in front of me. I have looked at it 40 times. She looks better than she did before, Ryan. She looks like the thing she was supposed to become, and we never saw it because we never let it happen." Silence. "Don't," Ryan said. "You called me. I called you because—" "You called me," Diane said, "because you needed somebody to tell you it wasn't real. And I did that for 11 years, and I'm too tired now. I'm 74. Beth won't speak to me. Do you know that your sister hasn't come to this house since Christmas?" A shaky breath. "She read those letters, Ryan. Emma sent her copies. 9 letters and a board finding and no note. Nothing. Not one word of accusation. Just the documents. And Beth read them at my kitchen table, and then she got up and put her coat on and said, 'You knew.' And I said yes, and she left." Ryan's hand was shaking. "When?" he said. 11 months ago." "You never told me." "No," Diane said. "I didn't, because you'd just gotten engaged, and I thought that boy deserves 1 good year." She laughed once, and it was awful. "I did it again. Do you see it? I did the exact same thing again. 11 years later with my own son, and I did it in the same voice." At 6:50 that evening, Ryan came home, and Vivian Cole was standing at the counter with the magazine open in front of her. He stopped in the doorway. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. "You've read it," he said. "Twice." "Vivian?" "Sit down," she said. "Viv, Ryan." She didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. It was one of the things he had loved about her at 24 and had found at 46 made him feel like a boy in a headmaster's office. "Sit down, please. I'd like to have the conversation now instead of in 4 years." He sat. Vivian closed the magazine and set her hand flat on top of it. "How long did you look at it?" she said. "What, the photograph, before you understood it was her? How long?" Ryan opened his mouth. "Don't," Vivian said. "Don't build it. I've watched you build things for 2.5 years, and I'm not going to sit here and watch you build one at me. How long?" 4 seconds, he said. Vivian nodded slowly. "That's what I thought," she said. "It doesn't mean... It means you didn't know her." Vivian's voice was perfectly level. "That's not an accusation, Ryan. That's the finding. You lived beside that woman for 12 years, and you looked at a photograph of her face for 4 seconds, and you did not recognize it. And I'd like you to understand that I've known that about you since March, and I've been waiting because I wanted to see how long it would take." Ryan stared at her. "Since March. March. What happened in March?" Vivian looked at him for a moment. "You talked about her in your sleep," she said. The kitchen was silent. "That's not... You said it's in the box." Vivian's face didn't move. "You said it twice. And then you woke up and you said, 'What?' And I said, 'Nothing, go back to sleep.' And you did. And I lay there until it got light." "Vivian. So I went and looked," she said. Ryan went white. "It's still in the closet, Ryan. On the shelf. In our house." Her hand was shaking now just slightly, and she pressed it harder against the magazine to stop it. "You moved it. You packed it in a box in Chicago, and you drove it here, and you put it on a shelf in the bedroom you sleep in with me." "Viv." 9 letters, Vivian said, "and a copy of a board finding, and the license renewals, all 5 of them. You kept the receipts, Ryan. You kept the receipts of the thing you did to her, and you carried them to my house." Ryan couldn't speak. "I sat on the floor of our closet and I read all of it," Vivian said. "It took 2 hours, and when I got to the end, I understood something that I want to say out loud exactly once, and then never again, because I don't think I can survive saying it twice." She looked up at him. "You didn't leave her for me." "That's not true. You left her because you couldn't stand being in the room with her anymore," Vivian said. "Not because you stopped loving her. Because every single day you had to look at a woman you'd stolen a life from, and she was kind to you, and that was intolerable. And I wasn't a woman, Ryan. I was an exit." The sound Ryan made was not a word. "And here's the part that I actually can't forgive," Vivian said, and her voice finally cracked. "It's not that you used me. People get used. I'm 46. I've been used before. I'll survive being used." She wiped her face with the back of her wrist angrily, like she resented the interruption. "It's that you knew. You've known the whole time. You renewed her license 5 times, so don't sit there and tell me you were confused. You're the most deliberate man I've ever met. You did all of it on purpose, and then you spent 12 years acting surprised." "Vivian, listen to me. I've listened to you for 2.5 years, she said. "Do you know what you talk about?" He stopped. "Do you?" she said. "Vivian." "Her." Vivian stood up. "You talk about her, constantly. You talk about her at breakfast. You talk about her in the car. You've told me the story of the night she signed the papers 11 times. Ryan, 11 times, and every single time it's slightly different because you keep rewriting it, looking for the version where you come out, okay." She was crying now, and she did not care. "I told her that. Did you know that on the phone that night in her kitchen? I told her you never stopped talking about her, and I said it to hurt her because I was a coward, and I wanted to win something. And she..." Vivian stopped. "What?" Ryan said. "She asked me a question." "What question?" "She asked me how much of you I actually wanted back." Vivian's voice went to pieces. "The memory or the man? And I hung up on her, and I've been answering that question for 2.5 years every single day at breakfast in the car." She had to stop. Ryan reached for her. "Don't touch me," Vivian said. He froze. "I'm going to say the last one now," she said. "Then I'm going to my sister's." "Viv, please." "When I was 24, Vivian said, I thought you were the most extraordinary man I'd ever met. And I've spent 2.5 years finding out that I wasn't wrong. You are extraordinary, Ryan. That's the tragedy. You are actually as good as I thought you were, and you took a woman with the best hands anyone had ever seen, and you made her small on purpose over 11 years in 100 small decisions in a driveway. And then you kept her paperwork current so you could tell yourself a story." She picked up her keys. I wasn't competing with Emma Parker. I understood that in March. I've been competing with the memory of a woman you destroyed and then missed. At the door, she stopped. Ryan. He didn't look up. Send her the box, Vivian said. The conference was in New York in April, and Emma did not want to go. You're going, Ruth said. Ruth. You're going because I'm 60 and I have a bad hip and I'm not standing on a stage in New York explaining village trauma protocols to a room full of people who've never seen a village, and you're the only person in this program who can say the word aid without sounding like she's describing a houseplant. Ruth handed her a folder. 20 minutes, then a panel, then you come home. Who's on the panel? 4 department chairs and a woman from the magazine. Delia. Ruth, I didn't consent to that photograph. I know, and she knows. And she spent 11 months feeling bad about it, which is why she pushed to get you the slot, which is why you have a slot. Ruth shrugged. That's how it works. People do the wrong thing, and then spend a long time trying to make it into the right thing. Sometimes it even lands. Emma looked at her. Go, Ruth said. Say the true thing. That's your whole gift, Parker. You've never been especially charming. You just say the true thing at 9 in the morning. She spoke at 2 o'clock on a Thursday. She spoke for 22 minutes, and she did not use a single slide because she had never learned how, and at the 18-minute mark, she said something that 400 people would repeat for a year. There's a woman named Marcy Alloc, Emma said, who held pressure on her brother's femoral artery for 2 hours and 10 minutes before I got there. She wrote the times on her arm in pen. And I want to be extremely precise about something because I've read what people wrote about this, and they got it wrong in a way that's flattering to me and insulting to her. She looked out. I did not save Peter Alloc's life. I finished it. His sister saved his life. She saved it for 2 hours and 10 minutes with her body weight and a ballpoint pen alone, and then I flew in at the end and did the part that requires a medical degree, which was, I'd estimate, about 9% of the work. A room of 400 people was completely silent. The reason I'm telling you this, Emma said, is not humility. I'm not humble. Ask anyone I've ever worked with. I'm telling you because there is a story that this profession loves, and it's the story where the doctor arrives, and I need you to understand that the doctor arriving is almost never the moment. The moment happened 2 hours earlier, and it happened to a 23-year-old with no medical degree and no backup. And if you build a system that only funds the arriving, people will die on floors while your helicopter is grounded. She got off the stage at 2:22, and there was a man standing at the bottom of the stairs. She saw him from 4 steps up. She did not stop walking. Emma? She reached the bottom. Emma, please. 2 minutes. Emma Parker looked at her ex-husband for the first time in 2 years and 4 months. You look tired, she said. Ryan laughed. It came out cracked. Yeah, he said. Yeah, that's fair. That wasn't a barb. You look tired. I say it 40 times a day. It's an occupational tic. She shifted the folder. 2 minutes for what? I just want to talk. About what? And Ryan Whitmore, corporate attorney, 48 years old, a man who had never once in his life walked into a room without knowing what he was going to say, opened his mouth and had nothing in it. I don't know, he said. Emma studied him. Okay, she said. Come on, there's coffee. They sat at 2:31 in the afternoon at a small table in a hallway full of people, and Emma put 2 sugars in his coffee without asking and slid it over, and Ryan looked at it and his face came apart. Don't, Emma said. I'm not. You are. Drink it. He drank it. You saw the article, Emma said. Yes. Vivian? She left, Ryan said. 11 months ago. Emma nodded slowly. She did not say she was sorry. Ryan noticed that and was almost grateful for it. Do you want to know why, he said. No. Emma, I mean it. I don't want to know why. Ryan, listen. She set her cup down. I want to be careful here because you're upset and I'm not, and that's a very unequal room, and I've been on the other side of it for 12 years, and I know exactly how it feels. So I'm going to be plain with you. I have no appetite for this. There's no piece of me that wants to hear about her leaving. There's no piece of me that's going to enjoy it. That's not restraint. It's just gone. Ryan stared at the table. You said that on the phone, he said, 2 years ago. You said the woman I'd reach for doesn't exist. She doesn't. I didn't believe you. I know. I've spent 2 years not believing you, Ryan said. I want you to understand that because I think it's the only honest thing I've got. I've been reading about you for 2 years. Do you know that I set an alert? Your name. There's 400 Emma Parkers, so mostly it's real estate agents in Ohio, but sometimes, his voice went, there was a thing in a trade journal in September about the aid training curriculum. That's Marcy's, not mine. It has your name on it. It has my name on it because a 23-year-old Yupik woman without an MD can't get a curriculum approved in this country, Emma said. And I can. That's not credit Ryan. That's a signature. You of all people should know the difference. Ryan closed his eyes. There it is, he said. There's what? That. He looked up and his eyes were red. That thing you do. That thing where you say the exact true sentence in 11 words. You did it for 12 years, and I heard it every single time, and I never once... He stopped. Emma, I want to say something, and I need you to let me get to the end of it. Go. I'm not going to ask you for anything. Okay. I mean it. I'm not going to ask. I know exactly what I did. I've known the whole time, which is worse, and I know that it isn't the kind of thing where a man says a good enough sentence and gets forgiven. He wrapped both hands around the cup. But I've been carrying one thing for 2 years, and it's going to kill me, and I'd rather hand it to you and let you throw it away than keep it. Say it. April 9th, Ryan said. I sat in the driveway for 40 minutes. I know. You don't know what I decided? Emma went still. I decided to tell you, Ryan said. The hallway was full of noise, and Emma Parker heard none of it. I sat in that car and I read it 4 times, and I decided to tell you, he said. I got out of the car. I had it in my hand. I walked up to the door, and I could hear you through the door, Em. You were humming. His face was wet, and he did not wipe it. And I stood there with my hand on the door, and I thought one more week of this, and then I'll tell her. And I put it in my coat. Ryan, 1 week, he said. That's what I chose. Not 11 years. I never once chose 11 years. I chose 1 week 400 separate times, and I want you to know that because I think it's the only thing I understand now that I didn't understand then. He looked up. There was never a day I decided to ruin your life. There were 400 days I decided to be comfortable for 7 more days, and that's the same thing. Emma, it's exactly the same thing, and it's worse because a man who ruins your life once is a monster, and you can hate him. I did it in installments so small that even I couldn't see them. Emma sat back. She was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, she said. Ryan's head came up. I mean it, she said. That's the truest thing you've ever said to me, and I've been waiting for it for 13 years, and I want you to know I heard it. She looked at him steadily. And Ryan, it changes nothing. I know. No, I need you to actually hear it, because you're going to leave here, and you're going to spend 6 months turning that sentence over looking for the door in it, and there's no door. Her voice was gentle. It was so gentle, it was almost unbearable. You're not forgiven. You're understood. Those aren't the same, and I'm never going to give you the other one, and I want to tell you exactly why, because you deserve the reason. He waited. Because forgiveness is a transaction, Emma said, and you'd spend it. You'd take it home and you'd feel lighter, and in a year you'd be a man who'd been forgiven, and Ryan, you'd start again. Not with me, with somebody. Because the thing in you that opened my mail isn't remorse-shaped, it's comfort-shaped. And comfort doesn't learn from being forgiven. It learns from carrying something. Ryan didn't move. So carry it, Emma said. That's my answer. Carry it your whole life. That's not cruelty. That's the only thing I can give you that might actually work. Emma. And here's the other half, she said, because I'm not going to leave you with only that. She leaned forward. I got it back. Ryan looked up. That's what I want you to know, Emma said. Not to hurt you. It'll hurt you, but that's not why. I got it back. My hands are still my hands. I was 41 and I sat on a floor in Anchorage, convinced I'd been hollowed out and I hadn't been Ryan. You didn't take it. You couldn't. It was never yours to take. Her voice didn't shake at all. You took 11 years. That's real and it's enormous, and I'll be angry about it in some quiet way until I die. But you didn't take her. She was in there the whole time. She was in there while I picked out napkins for your mother's gala, and she was in there when I sat on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m. and asked you what was wrong with me, and she was in there in the driveway in the rain with a broken suitcase, and she is sitting across from you right now drinking a bad coffee. Ryan put his hand over his mouth. That's the thing I actually needed to say, Emma said. It's the only reason I sat down. Everything else is bookkeeping. There was a long silence. The box, Ryan said. What? I sent it 2 weeks ago to the Anchorage address. Everything, Em. The letters, the finding, the renewals, all of it. Every piece of paper I ever kept from you. Emma nodded slowly. I got it, she said. He stopped. You got it 9 days ago. You didn't say anything. No. Did you open it? Emma looked at him for a moment. I gave it to Ruth, she said. Who's Ruth? She runs my program. She's 60. She's the most frightening woman I've ever met. Emma picked up her cup. I gave it to her unopened, and I said, go through this and tell me if there's anything in it I need. And she called me back the next day, and she said there was one thing. What? A photograph, Emma said. Of me, from 2009, in scrubs outside the ambulance bay at 6 a.m. after a bad one. Sarah took it. I don't remember it being taken. She turned the cup slowly. Ruth said, there's one thing in here that belongs to you, and it's not any of the paper. And she mailed me the photograph, and she burned the rest. Ryan sat absolutely still. She burned it, he said. In a barrel. She sent me a video. She's 60, and she doesn't know how to end a video, so it's 4 minutes long and 40 seconds of it is her figuring out the phone. Emma, I've watched it 11 times, Emma said. Ryan laughed. It broke halfway through and turned into something else, and he sat in a hallway in New York and covered his face with both hands, and Emma Parker did not reach across the table and did not say his name and did not make it easier. She let him have it. That in the end was the last gift she ever gave him. She let him feel the whole thing all the way down without a single word of comfort, because comfort was the poison, and she was the only person left alive who knew it. At 2:58, she stood up. I have a panel, she said. Ryan looked up. His face was wrecked. Emma. Yes. Was there ever a version, he said, where I said it, in the driveway, where I walked through that door and handed it to you? Emma stood there with her folder under her arm. Yes, she said. What happens? I go back to work, Emma said. I run the night float. I'm home by 8 most mornings. You're asleep. I get in beside you, and you say something about the case without opening your eyes, and I tell you, and you fall back asleep in the middle of it, and I lie there listening to you breathe, and I think I have the best life of anybody I know. She said it without a single tremor. 20 years, Ryan. 2 kids, probably. Your mother learns to like me by the second one. Sarah's the godmother. And at some point when we're 70, you'd have said something about that April. And I'd have said what April, because I'd have forgotten it, because it wouldn't have mattered. Ryan couldn't breathe. That's what was on the other side of the door, Emma said. That's what 1 week cost. She turned to go. Emma. She stopped, but she didn't turn around. I'm sorry, Ryan said. And Emma Parker, standing in a hallway in New York with a folder under her arm and 400 people waiting for her, said, I know you are. It was never the sorry that was missing. She walked away, and she did not look back, and she never saw him again. The panel ran until 4:40, and at 4:41, Delia Frank caught her at the door. Dr. Parker? Delia. I owe you an apology, and I've been rehearsing it for 11 months, so if you'd let me get through it without being kind to me, that would actually help. Go. I took your photograph without asking, and I published it, and I told myself it was fine because the piece wasn't about you. Delia's hands were full of paper, and she didn't put any of it down. And that's true. And it's also not why I used it. I used it because it was the best image I had, and I wanted the piece to be read. Emma looked at her for a second. Okay, she said. That's it. What do you want me to do, Delia? You're right, and you said it out loud in under 30 seconds. I've been waiting 13 years for somebody to do that. Emma shifted the folder. You want absolution? I don't do that anymore. You want a second one that I'll consider. A second what? Peace, Emma said. Marcy's curriculum. It's in front of the state board in August, and it's going to die there because it's got my name on it. And everybody in that room will assume it's mine. And the second they think it's mine, they'll fund the doctor part and cut the aid part because that's what they always do. Delia stopped moving. Say that again. They'll fund the helicopter and cut the pen. Emma, you want to make it right, Emma said. Don't apologize to me. Go to Kwethluk in August and write down what a 23-year-old does in the 2 hours and 10 minutes before the helicopter isn't coming. And put her name on it. Her name Delia, not mine. Mine's already been on enough things that weren't mine. Delia Frank looked at her for a long moment. You know they'll say you're being modest, she said. They can say whatever they want. They'll write it as humility. It'll make you more famous, not less. Then let it, Emma said. I'm 44. I've spent 11 years being small on purpose for a man's comfort. I'm not going to spend the rest of it being small on purpose for my own. She got back to Anchorage on a Saturday, and Ruth Okalik was standing in the doorway of her office with her arms folded. You're back. I'm back. Sit down. Ruth. Sit down, Parker. Emma sat. Ruth closed the door, which she never did, and Emma felt the whole room change. I got a call, Ruth said. From who? From a chair of emergency medicine in Chicago. Emma's face didn't move. He watched you speak, Ruth said. He said, and I'm quoting because I wrote it down out of sheer spite, he said, we'd like to talk to Dr. Parker about a directorship. It's a big program. It's a serious program. She's wasted out there. Emma laughed. It came out flat. Wasted, she said. That's what he said. Which hospital? Ruth told her. Emma sat very still. That's Mercy Lake, she said. Yes, that's my hospital. Yes, that's the hospital that stopped calling me in 2015, Emma said, because a man on my telephone told them I'd made my decision, and not one of them ever drove 20 minutes to my house to check. I know. They wrote 9 letters, and then they let a lawyer's voice end it. Emma. 11, Emma said. Anne called twice more. It's 11. Ruth waited. Say the rest, Emma said. He asked me if you were bitter, Ruth said. Emma's head came up. That was the actual question. He said, between us, Ruth, is she bitter? Because there's a version of this story where she's bitter and I can't put a bitter person in front of a department. Ruth's voice was perfectly level, and her eyes were not. I said, she held a man's wrist for 9 hours in a room with no radio because she didn't trust the monitor. You go ahead and tell me what that is. Emma didn't say anything for a moment. What did he say? He said that wasn't an answer. He's right, Emma said. It wasn't. No, Ruth agreed. It wasn't, so answer it. Emma stood up. She walked to the window and stood there with her back to the room for a long moment. Am I bitter? She said. Yes. Ruth, I want to be honest with you, because you've never once been anything but honest with me, and I'm not going to start being charming at 44. Emma turned around. Yes, some days. There's a woman who lives in the back of me, and she's 41, and she's sitting on a suitcase in the rain, and she's never getting up, and she's furious, and she will be furious when I'm 80. Ruth nodded slowly. So the answer's yes, she said. The answer's yes, Emma said. And here's the part he actually needed and didn't ask for. She doesn't run anything. She's not allowed near the radio. She's in there and she has an opinion about everything. And I let her have it because she earned it, and then I go to work. Emma sat back down. That's what I'd have told him. He wouldn't have liked it. No, Ruth said. He wouldn't. He wanted you to say no. I know he did. Everybody in that job says no, Ruth said. Every single one of them says, oh, I've moved past all that, and they say it in the interview, and then 4 years later, they're screaming at a resident about a supply cart at 2 a.m, and nobody understands why, including them. She leaned back. The bitter ones who know they're bitter are the safest people in the building, Parker. It's the ones who've moved past all that you have to watch. The silence sat there. Are you taking it? Ruth said. No. Don't answer fast. I'm not answering fast. I answered this in a hallway in New York 11 months before he called. Why not? And Emma said, because they'd fund the helicopter and cut the pen. Ruth Okalik looked at her for a long, long moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and took out a folder and slid it across. What's this? My retirement, Ruth said. Emma didn't touch it. Ruth. 2 years. I've got a bad hip and a worse shoulder, and I've been doing this 31 years, and I am not going to be the woman who stays 4 years too long and screams at somebody about a supply cart. Ruth folded her hands. I don't want you to answer today. I want you to know the question exists, because I've had 11 people in this chair over 31 years who I thought could do this, and every one of them wanted the helicopter. Emma stared at the folder. I'm 3 years back, she said. 3 years, Ruth. I've got an 11-year hole in the middle of my career. Yes, you'd give it to a woman with a hole in her. Parker, Ruth said. The hole is the qualification. Emma looked up. You think I'd hand this to Tobias? Ruth said. He's brilliant. He's 32 and he's brilliant, and he's never once in his life had somebody take something from him and tell him he gave it away. He can't see it. He looks at Marcy Alec and he sees a very good aide. You look at Marcy Alec and you see somebody standing exactly where you stood 3 feet from the thing she's good at with a room full of people about to explain to her why she can't have it. Emma's hand was over her mouth. That's not sentiment, Ruth said. That's operational. 40% of my people wash out, and it's never the medicine. It's the second week when a man dies right and they can't hold it. You know how to hold something for 11 years. She shrugged. Turns out that's a skill. It was just pointed at the wrong thing. Emma sat there with her hand over her mouth. Say something, Ruth said. I need to call Sarah. Of course you do. Sarah Mitchell picked up on the second ring at 9:40 at night. Talk. Ruth offered me the program. There was a crash on the other end, and a word Sarah did not usually say, and then say that again. Ruth offered me the program in 2 years, when she retires. Emma. Sarah, say something useful. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without crying, because if I cry, you're going to make a joke, and if you make a joke, I'm going to have to drive to Alaska. Sarah. Take it, Sarah said. That's it. That's your whole analysis. You spent 9 days telling me I'd die up there. I was right. You almost did. Sarah's voice was thick. Do you know what you said to me on that floor in Anchorage 9 seconds? You said I was waiting for someone to tell me I could. I remember. Somebody just told you you could, Sarah said. Ruth Okalik, 31 years. That woman doesn't hand things to people. She doesn't even hand you a pen. Sarah's voice broke completely. Emma, she just told you you could. Don't stand in a hallway for 11 years waiting for a better one. Emma sat down on the edge of her bed. Sarah. What? I'm scared. Good, Sarah said. Delgado would be scared. That's the price of comprehension. She told you that on the phone, and you've been carrying it around like a rock in your shoe ever since, so don't pretend you don't know. How do you know she said that? Because she said it to me in 2009, Sarah said, and I've never forgotten it either. Anne Delgado died in November at 77, in her own bed having worked until August, which was exactly what everyone who had ever met her would have predicted. Emma found out in a text from a woman she'd never met a resident who'd been asked to send it, and she stood in a hallway in Bethel and read it 4 times. The service was in Chicago, and Emma flew in on a Tuesday. She was not asked to speak. She had not expected to be. She was one of maybe 300 people, and she sat in the 4th row from the back and did not tell anyone she was there. At the end, a woman found her. Dr. Parker. Yes. I'm Grace. I was her last chief. She left something. The woman held out an envelope. She wrote about 40 of these in September. She had a list. Emma took it. There's one more thing, Grace said. She told me to say it out loud instead of writing it because she said if she wrote it, you'd read it 11 times looking for a way out. Emma went very still. She said, Grace said carefully, tell Parker the answer to the question is yes, and she can stop looking. Emma stood in the back of a church in Chicago and could not speak. Does that mean something? Grace said. Yes, Emma said. It means something. She read the letter that night in a hotel room at 11:20, and it was 4 lines long in handwriting that had gotten bad in the last year and that Anne clearly had not cared about. Emma, I have been asked to write something meaningful, and I refuse. You know all of it already. I'm going to use my 4 lines on the only thing you don't. You keep saying he took 11 years. He didn't. You gave them away, and I want you to hear that from someone who loves you because everyone else is going to spend the rest of your life telling you it was done to you. And that's a comfortable story, and comfortable stories are what got you into that house. You gave them away because you were 29 and tired, and a man offered to carry something and you were relieved. That's not a crime. That's a Tuesday. Half the world does it. The reason I'm telling you is that it's the only version where you're not a victim. And I have watched a great many people spend their 60s being a victim. And Emma, you don't have the temperament. It'll rot you. You gave them. Which means they were yours. Which means the ones you have left are yours too. Spend them better. A.D. Emma sat on the edge of a hotel bed and read it 11 times. Then she laughed out loud alone in a hotel room in Chicago because Ann Delgado had known she would. She took the program in the spring 2 years later at 46. The first thing she did was fire the helicopter. Not literally, but that was how it got told, and she never corrected it because it was true enough. She went in front of a state board in August with Marcia Look sitting beside her, and a proposal that moved 40% of a budget away from transport and into aid training, and a man in the third row said the word unproven, and Emma said, "It's not unproven, it's unfunded." Those are different words, and I'd like the record to show which one we're actually discussing. They approved it 8-3. Marcy Alec got her name on it. First author, Emma was fourth. Tobias Reyes, who was 35 now and had stopped glancing at her like she was somebody's mother about 4 years ago, caught her in the hall afterward. Fourth. You wrote 60% of that. I wrote 60% of the sentences, Emma said. That's not the same as writing 60% of the thing. Marcy knows something I don't know, and I'll never know it, and I can either put my name on it or I can be the last person who ever gets to learn it from her. Tobias shook his head. You know they're going to write about this. Probably. They're going to say you're humble. Yes. Are you... Emma stopped walking. No, she said. Tobias, I'm the least humble person you've ever met. I sat in a room for 11 years and let a man tell me what I was, and I'm never doing it again as long as I live, and everything I do now looks like humility, and it isn't. It's the opposite. She started walking again. Humility is when you don't think you're worth much. What I've got is that I know exactly what I'm worth down to the decimal, and it's not the fourth slot, and I put myself there anyway, because I'm the only one in the room who can afford to. She was 51 when she found out Ryan had died. It came the way everything came now sideways from a person she didn't know. Beth Whitmore called her at 8:15 on a Sunday morning, and Emma stood in her kitchen and said, "Beth." And there was a long pause. "He had a stroke," Beth said. "In March." "March. It's July, I know. I know. I've had your number for 9 years, and I picked it up about 400 times. Beth's voice was steady in the way of a woman who had done all her crying weeks ago. "I want to be clear that I'm not calling to ask you for anything." "Okay." "He didn't ask for you," Beth said. Emma closed her eyes. "I want you to know that first because I think you were about to worry about it," Beth said. "He was awake for 2 days at the end, and he never said your name once. He talked about our father. He asked about the dog." A breath. "I sat there for 2 days waiting for him to say your name, and he never did. And Emma, it took me a month to understand why, and when I did, I had to pull over." Beth. "He didn't say it because he'd already decided not to." Beth's voice cracked exactly once and then rebuilt itself. 20 years. He never called. Never once in 20 years, and I used to think that was him being decent, and it wasn't. It was the last thing you told him. You told him to carry it. And Emma, he did. He carried it for 20 years, and he took it into the ground, and he did not put it down on you at the end when he could have, when everybody would have let him. She stopped. "It's the only thing my brother ever did right, and it took him his whole life." Emma stood in her kitchen with her hand flat on the counter. "Beth," she said, "was he alone?" "No, I was there. My kids were there." "Diane, she died in 2019. "I didn't know that." "No," Beth said. "You wouldn't have. Nobody told you." A pause. "She asked for you." Emma didn't move. "At the end," Beth said, "she asked for you twice, and I want you to know that I lied to her. I sat there and held my mother's hand and told her you were coming and you weren't because I never called you because I decided that she didn't get to have you." Beth's voice went hard and then went soft. "I've thought about that for 7 years, and I'd do it again." The line was quiet. "Beth," Emma said, "can I tell you something?" "Yes." "When you sat in my kitchen in September and cried about your husband, and I made you tea." "Emma, I'm not saying it to hurt you. Listen." Emma's voice was even. You knew about Vivian, and you sat in my kitchen, and you let me take care of you anyway, and I've carried that for 20 years, and I want you to know that I've decided something about it, and I want you to have it, because I think you've been waiting 9 years to be told." Beth was crying now silently. "You were 29, Emma said, and you were drowning, and your family had a rule, and the rule was that nobody says the true thing out loud. That rule was older than you. Your mother built it. Your brother lived in it. You didn't invent it, Beth. You just didn't beat it. And I've spent 20 years around people who couldn't beat things that were bigger than them, and I've stopped calling that evil. It's just how most people are." A pause. "You sent me the letters back. You put your coat on in your mother's kitchen and you said, you knew, and you walked out and you never went back. That's the whole ledger. That's you beating it. 19 years late is still beating it." Beth Whitmore cried on the phone for a while, and Emma did not fill the silence. "There's a box," Beth said finally. Emma's whole body went cold. "No," she said. "Emma, no, Beth. I know exactly what you're about to say, and the answer's no." "He wrote you letters." "I know he did." "You know?" "Of course I know," Emma said. "Beth, I've known since the day I walked out of that house. He's been writing me letters for 20 years and never sending them, and there's a box, and it's on a shelf, and now you found it, and you think it's my inheritance." Her voice was completely steady. "It isn't. It's his. Burn it." "Emma, some of these, burn it." "There's one from the week you left," Beth said. "It's 11 pages. "Beth," Emma sat down. "Listen to me, because I'm going to say this once, and I'm never going to say it again, and then I'm going to hang up, and you and I are going to talk again in a month about something ordinary, because I'd like that, and I think you would too." "Okay." "That man wrote me letters for 20 years and never sent one," Emma said. "That's not love. It's the same thing he did with my license. He kept a door open so he could tell himself he wasn't a man who closed one. 11 pages in a box on a shelf is not a letter, Beth. It's a receipt. He wrote it for himself so that at some point in the future, someone would find it and know he had feelings." Her voice softened, and that was somehow worse. "He spent his whole life doing the private version of the right thing, renewing the license instead of telling me, writing letters instead of sending them, deciding in a driveway alone over and over, and never once walking through a door and handing me a piece of paper. So you don't want to know what's in it?" "I know what's in it," Emma said. "It says he's sorry." Silence. "It was never the sorry that was missing," Emma said. "Burn it." She hung up. And then Emma Parker, 51 years old, stood in her kitchen for a while and did not feel triumphant, and did not feel light, and did not feel free. She felt tired. She called Sarah. "Talk." "Ryan's dead." A pause. "Since when?" "March." "How do you feel?" "Tired," Emma said. "Yeah," Sarah said. "That sounds right." "Sarah, I thought I'd feel something." "You are feeling something. You're feeling tired." A rustle. You've been waiting 30 years for a feeling with a name on it. It's not coming. That's not how it works. The big ones don't announce themselves, they just make you tired at 8 in the morning on a Sunday for no reason you can explain." Emma laughed. It came out wet. "Do you want me to come?" Sarah said. "No." "I'll come." "Sarah, I have 11 weeks banked because I have no life," Sarah said, "which is the exact sentence I said to you 30 years ago, and I want you to know I've been saving it." Emma put her hand over her eyes and laughed until it turned into the other thing. "Come," she said. They gave her a chair at 62, not a hospital chair. a university-endowed one in remote and austere medicine, a field that had not existed under that name when she was 29, and there was a lecture and a plaque, and Emma stood in a room full of 400 people and did what she had always done. She said the true thing at 9 in the morning. "I want to talk about the 11 years, she said. The room went very quiet because everybody in it knew, because it had been written about badly for 30 years. "There's a version of my life you've all read," Emma said. "In that version, a man took 11 years from a woman, and she got them back. It's a good story. It's on the internet in about 9 languages. And I want to tell you that it's false, and I want to tell you exactly how it's false, because there are people in this room who are 29 and tired, and this is the only useful thing I have." She looked out. "Nobody took them," she said. "I gave them away. I was 29 and I was frightened, and I had just lost a patient, and someone offered to carry it for me, and I was relieved. That's it. That's the whole crime. There was no villain in the doorway. There was a tired woman and an easier road, and I took it 400 separate times, 1 week at a time, and every single one of those weeks I could have said no and I didn't." Somebody in the third row was crying. "Now the man in my house was cruel," Emma said. "I want to be precise because I've spent 40 years being precise, and I'm not going to get sentimental at 62. He hid a board finding from me for 14 months and let me think I was defective. That is one of the cruelest things I've ever heard of a person doing, and I've worked in villages where people freeze to death. He did that. He owns it. He carried it his whole life, and I'm told he never put it down, and I hope that's true. And I'm not going to pretend that's a generous thing to hope." She paused. "But he could only hide it," she said, "because I had already agreed to stop opening my own mail." The room did not move. "That's the sentence," Emma said. "That's the only thing I know that's worth an endowed chair. Nobody ever takes your life in one motion. It doesn't happen that way, and I've never once seen it happen that way, and I have been looking for 40 years. It goes 1 week at a time, and every week there's a door, and the door is always unlocked, and it's always heavy, and there is always a good reason to open it next week instead." She let it sit. "Somebody's going to ask me the question," she said, "so I'll answer it now, and we can all go get lunch. They always ask if I forgave him." She looked out at 400 people. "No," Emma said. "And I want the young ones to hear the reason, because the reason is the whole lecture. I didn't withhold it to punish him. I withheld it because forgiveness is a thing you hand to someone so they can put something down, and that man's entire disease was putting things down early. He put down my career because carrying it was uncomfortable. He put down the truth in April because carrying it was uncomfortable. Everything that man ever destroyed, he destroyed reaching for comfort. Giving him comfort at the end would have been the last cruelty. And I loved him for 12 years, and I wasn't going to do that to him. She picked up her notes and did not look at them. "People ask what the revenge was," she said. "They want it to be the stage or the chair or the program or the fact that his marriage failed. And I'll tell you the truth, and then I'm finished. There wasn't any. I never took a single thing from that man. Not his house, not his money, not his name in a courtroom, not $1. He died in a bed with his sister holding his hand, and I did not attend." She stopped. "The revenge," Emma said, "was that at 41 on a floor in Anchorage with 9 seconds gone and my hands shaking, I found out he had never touched the thing that mattered. He had 11 years and my mail and my license and my telephone and my whole entire life in his hands, and he could not reach it. Nobody can. Not him, not you, not anybody who ever tells you what you are." Her voice did not shake at all. "It was in there the whole time. It was in there while I picked out napkins. And on the day I finally went looking for it at 41 with a broken suitcase and no plan, it was exactly where I left it, and it had been waiting for me the entire time, and it did not hold one single day of it against me." The room was absolutely silent. "That's all," Emma Parker said. "Go open your mail."